Well, it finally arrived. We got the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 trailer, and with that trailer, a lot of big reveals. Let's take a couple minutes to break down the new trailer, talk about all the goodies James Gunn gave us, and where I think this movie might actually be going. Well, as many of you know, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will be James Gunn's final story for the MCU, at least for right now. He's taken up as a new head of DC Studios for Warner Brothers, so this is effectively his swan song. Now, he's made it pretty clear this is the end of a story for this group of Guardians, and yesterday we finally got a brand new trailer that I have to say is already a bit of a tearjerker before we even get to see the movie. I want to remind you guys, this was a teaser trailer, so not a lot was revealed, but I thought we had some pretty great takeaways from what was shared with us. So let's take a couple minutes to dive into all of that. Now, first and foremost, we got our first look at Will Poulter as Adam Warlock. It's been over 6 years since he was first teased in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and the speculation has run rampant about the character for years. Now, we only got a quick glimpse, but it does appear he has a very comic-accurate look for the character. Now, in the clip, we saw him taking on a Nebula, who I have to say is likely not to fare well against the character. It appears the Sovereign has indeed sent him after the Guardians, and although there will be no doubt he will be a villain, where he ends up by the end of the story should be pretty interesting. With the Infinity Saga already concluded and its comic book history so closely tied to that, I could totally see this character coming in this movie and potentially being a part of the team in the future. Now, we also saw the return of Gamora. We met this version of Gamora in Endgame after the original was killed during Infinity War. This is clearly a different version of the character, and overall, I have to say, she looks much tougher, edgier than the previous version. I think this is a pretty cool way to bring the character back to life, but maybe make some corrections. Whether she makes it out of the movie, we'll have to wait and see, but everything we saw of Gamora in this trailer is absolutely improved. Now, the one character from the original Guardians that got more screen time during this trailer than anything was Rocket. This movie is clearly going to focus on Rocket's origin story, something we've been teased about for a while. We've known from the start that Rocket had pretty terrible experiments done on him before we even met him in the first Guardians movie. It's pretty clear he was subject to some experiments from the High Evolutionary. And I think that's actually what completely developed Half-World, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Now, we did see Rocket hug another character in that trailer, and if you're unfamiliar with who that is, that's Lady Lila, who is a very similar creature to him, but she's an otter. Now, this character was actually teased in that initial lineup when they were arrested by the Nova Corps way back in Volume 1, and it appears in this scene we see them reunited. But it does appear from what we can see, poor Lila has not had an easy run of it. Her entire arm looks robotic, and quite honestly, I would not be surprised as she's one of the High Evolutionary's discarded experiments. All these details about Rocket in the trailer really give you the idea that he may not make it out of this movie alive. He is one of my favorite characters, and I have to say it is rather foreboding. There were a couple parts in the trailer that this seemed to be manifesting, but I do wonder if this is a bit of misdirection. With Layla being part of this movie, I could totally see, after the High Evolutionary is defeated, Rocket returning to Half-World and spending his time out there. Whether Marvel Studios chooses to kill off Rocket, we'll have to wait and see, but I do think this would be pretty devastating to most fans. Now, a big part of this trailer was Chukwudi Iwuji's High Evolutionary. We've known for a while he was going to be the villain of this movie, and it's been long speculated that would be the exact part he would play. Now, I have to say, he does appear quite changed from the comic book version, with his costume being purple instead of red, but he looks absolutely menacing. Iwuji was awesome in Peacemaker as Myrn, and I really am looking forward to see what he brings to Guardians of the Galaxy. He came back over from DC with James Gunn, and I think he was going to make up a special part in this movie, and quite honestly, a character that could stick around in the MCU for a really long time. Now, with the introduction of the High Evolutionary, we also got Counter-Earth. Now, Counter-Earth has a really complicated story in the comics, but it was created by the High Evolutionary as a much purer version of Earth itself. Now, it's not populated by anybody who's even close to being a superhero, and the High Evolutionary eventually enlists Adam Warlock to bring the artificial planet fully under his thumb. Now, later on in the comics, it was inhabited by the New Men, who are an artificial race of mutagenically altered human-sized animals. So it does appear to me we're actually going to get a mishmash of these different versions from the comics. It should be noted that in the comics, these new men are not fans of the Guardians, and clearly the Guardians' first impression on them in the trailer did not go well thanks to Drax. Now, one of the other things I did note in the trailer was the new costumes. If you remember back in 2014, the very first concept art appeared to have the team decked out in the comic-accurate costumes. We've had slight variations of it over the years, but it appears they are finally in full effect. The costumes themselves, I actually think, look really great on the team. And although James Gunn has made it pretty clear this is the last iteration of this team, I actually hope in the future we see these uniforms be carried forward and become a staple of the franchise, whatever form and team it takes on next. Now, obviously, there was a lot of action in the trailer, and all of that looked pretty darn good. We actually got a lot of teasers, including some of the music, some nods to maybe 2001: A Space Odyssey, and a real close look at that new version of Groot called Swolt Groot. Now, where this takes the Guardians and how the High Evolutionary and Adam Warlock fit together as villains, we're going to have to wait and see. Once again, this was a teaser trailer, so they don't often reveal major plot points. Clearly based on some of the emotional reactions from Peter and Mantis, there is some tragedy in store for the team. And we do know James Gunn does not shy away from killing characters, so I do expect some fan favorites not to make it out of this movie. Now, I have to say, guys, if we're picking who is going to die in this movie, I think Drax is at the top of that list. I know many of you are worried about Rocket, and I'm pretty worried about Rocket too, but Dave Bautista is clearly done with Marvel, and I think he wants completely out of the role. I also do believe that it's a high possibility we could lose Nebula. Nebula has been a big part of the franchise, and her arc has shown pretty incredible growth. But those are my top two picks. Even despite there's a lot of foreshadowing that it could be Rocket, that just seems too obvious to me. Now, as for who survives, we'll have to wait and see. If I'm picking two characters that are most likely to survive, it would be Peter Quill and Mantis. The recent revelations from the holiday special I think will play big, so I could totally see both of them carrying forward, even if they're alone, still as a family. I think that bond has been important to the whole franchise and will continue to be important in this movie. Now, obviously, we're going to keep our eyes peeled for more Guardians trailers, stills, and clips. They're all liable to be coming our way. So if you want to get all of your cosmic updates, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll bring you all the news. But until we know more, what do you guys think? How did you feel about this first trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1? And which Guardians character do you think is most likely to die in this movie? I have to say, I'm probably going with Drax. Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you hit like, click subscribe, and if you don't ring that bell, you won't get any updates. Peace.